Some politicians believe that if you just keep saying something that is false over and over, people will eventually believe it is true. Governor Janet Mills is one of those politicians. According to Maine law, each two-year budget must be passed by a two-thirds vote of the legislature. In 2021, Democrats held a majority in Augusta, but not enough to get a two-thirds vote. But Democrats didn't want to engage in the traditional negotiations between the parties. They wanted to pass their own budget without any Republican input. Instead of following the law, Democrats concocted a workaround that enabled them to lock Republicans out of the process and pass a budget with a simple majority. To do this, majority Democrats pretended that the legislature had completed its work for the year and adjourned, even though barely half of their work was completed. They then immediately reconvened in special session and resumed their work. This meant, of course, that the needs and wishes of every Mainer who happens to live in a House or Senate district that elected a Republican was excluded from the state budget. The result was a two-year budget that passed without a single Republican vote. At $8.4 billion, it was by far the largest budget in the state's history. Despite the arrogance and raw political partisanship this move entailed, most Democrats did not deny their actions, but merely explained why they were suddenly necessary.
Representative Teresa Peirce of the Appropriations Committee said it's all about providing stability in an uncertain time.
My reasoning for doing this was really about giving certainty and clarity to the people of the state.
This back to basics budget, current services budget, provides predictability when we've had nothing but uncertainty over the last year. I think it's really important that we provide Maine families and businesses with the certainty that they need right now.
Governor Mills could have acted out of a sense of fairness and vetoed this budget, forcing Democrats to pass a two-thirds bipartisan budget instead. But she didn't. Instead, she endorsed the actions of her fellow Democrats in the legislature by signing the majority budget into law. This, however, has not stopped her from lying to the people of Maine by repeatedly pretending she signed a bipartisan budget.
We enacted a fully bipartisan budget. And Maine has done a good job, I think, working across the aisle to enact a budget. That's why the legislature, bipartisan budget this year, it was a unanimous bipartisan budget that was passed, and an overwhelmingly bipartisan. We enacted a fully bipartisan budget.
Members of the Maine press, however, describe the Democrats' majority budget differently.
The budget is the biggest thing the legislature does, but passage of this new two-year state budget is also creating big partisan discord in the legislature, and there's no way of knowing how long that is going to last.
The budget passed without any Republican votes.
We enacted a fully bipartisan budget.
We didn't allow any sort of deliberation, negotiations.
Republican leaders like Kathleen Dillingham called it a shortcut sham that left them on the sidelines.
To me, it's a sad day and disservice to the people of Maine, and certainly for all the districts that the minority represents, that their voice was excluded from this process.
Because the budget passed by a majority instead of the usual two-thirds vote, the legislature will now have to formally adjourn, so the new budget can take effect on schedule.
Even though the media, legislators from her own party, and the actual record of the roll call vote disagree with her false statements, Mills just keeps on telling the lie, hoping if she does it enough, it will become the truth.
It was a unanimous bipartisan budget that was passed. That's why the legislature, bipartisan budget this year, and an overwhelmingly bipartisan. We enacted a fully bipartisan budget.